Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. And it's my pleasure to welcome you once again to yet another edition of the Scale webinar series organized by ACIOE Associates. Today, we're going to be discussing on a very important topical issue that is critical to the work that we do as advocates in society space across Nigeria and the world. The topic is the effective strategies for gender-responsive policy advocacy and partnerships. You would agree with me that this is a topical issue in this day and age. And today we're going to be discussing the effective strategy on how we can efficiently mainstream gender in the policy advocacy that we are doing in terms of gender-responsive financings and all other concepts. My name is Emmanuel Effiong. I'm the project manager on the Nigerian Scale project at ACIOE Associates. At this point, I'll be introducing my colleague who will be moderating the webinar this afternoon, or this morning, or this evening, as the case may be. Kanidino Foyem is the Health and Gender Analyst at ACIOE Associates, and she'll be taking it up from here. Over to you, Dino.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to our great participants, to our facilitators from wherever you're joining us. I want to say thank you for joining this webinar. You know, Hawa, it's nice to have you here on the platform. I really want to say it's a great opportunity to be meeting with you, and I look forward to how you take us through the gender responsive policy advocacy, you know, based on experience. And you know what we see as what we need is practical how we are going to carry out advocacy, because I believe that's the best way for bringing about positive impact, not just at the global level, but down to the community level, the grassroots level, because these are the persons that are actually more important as they are the beneficiaries. So I'm going to hand over to you right now as you take us through, and I'll just sit back as a student because I really want to learn from you. So over to you, Hawa, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Dino, and the rest of the team for having me. To the audience and the participants, greetings to all of you, morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you are. First of all, I want us to start by taking you back to primary school and asking you, what did you want to be when you were in primary school? So think back and think, what did you want to be when you were in primary school? For me, when I was in primary school, I wanted to be a pilot. And then when you move to secondary school, when I was in secondary school, I wanted to be a judge. So we all have different career plans from primary school to secondary school. And then eventually when we are about to enter university, for those who have gone through that path, we now decide what we want to study. When I wanted to get to university, what I wanted to study, I was told that it was not a female subject. And I'm sure a lot of people have had this. I've heard these stories over and over ago when you want to study maybe mathematics or engineering 20 years ago, and they tell you, no, it's not a kind of topic women's basically go and study. And so that just takes us to the topic at hand, which is gender responsiveness. Now, when we talk about gender, we're not talking about the biological makeup. We're talking about, we're not talking about the X and Y chromosome. We're talking about the social norms that are placed on gender. And I mean, obviously, depending on where you are, it is more pronounced than other places. For us in Africa, we know that culture, tradition, and religion plays a huge role in whatever we decide to do or whatever we're involved in. It plays a good role in shaping our mindsets and our perceptions of what we think we ought to be doing or where we think we ought to be at every stage in our life. And we need to kind of change the narrative on this, because gender is not about male or female. Gender is, and we need to start paying better consideration into the policies we put in place, not only for in government, but also in organizations, and also the way and perceptions we also share in our homes as well, as parents, as grandparents, as aunties and uncles as well. We need to be mindful of the things we say, so we're not repeating generational statements that have been made to us. Thank you. Next slide. So I'm ready to start. Okay, so we're just going to go through a few different things. As I've mentioned, gender is focused on gender equality, but more so not on the social role that has been, instilled within us since we're children. Advocacy and partnership, we know that in short, in order to improve any situation or change any situation, we need advocacy to raise awareness on particular issues and also make clarifications concerning those issues. And the awareness we're raising obviously would kind of give more clarity into what people are thinking about a particular thing. Partnership is key for anything we're going to do, whether it's in the development sector. In any sector, partnership is key because the more people you work with, the bigger your team is and the bigger the pool of resources that are coming together to work together as well. And also having different stakeholders at the table is vital for improving policy and to make any positive change. So definitely that is how advocacy and leader partnership comes into gender responsive policy. Now, the importance of the policy is that obviously we need to promote gender equality to address disparities around the home, as I mentioned earlier, the member states, and even in organizations. We need to ensure that we're giving equal opportunities to both men and women, and we're not particularly putting emphasis on a particular issue for a female. For example, in terms of the organization, when a woman is pregnant and she's going to give birth, we know that statistics shows that women are the parent that, women are the parent that actually take more time off work, and they are in the taking time off work, they do find it difficult to readjust back into the working system. Now, a few places all around the world have actually put in places for men as well, fathers, to be able to take off time off work. I know recently in the last 2 years, Kaduna State in Nigeria was able to put in some policies to ensure that men also are able to take off time for work and do some parental leave. And we need to try and make this more general. It needs to be more of a norm that we hear men are the ones taking off time. We hear men are also joining in antenatal. So antenatal is not antenatal, prenatal, postnatal is not a thing for just the woman. We need to get men more involved. Decision making at all levels need to have all people, all stakeholders. I mean, imagine a table that is that has only men deciding on family planning for women. Obviously, we can see the disparities there. When a woman's voice or equal representative is not on the table, we're going to have issues in the policy. We're going to have throwback as well from the community, the population regarding those policies. And so we need to ensure that all stakeholders, not only men, women, but even greater representative for women, the elderly, the young, the middle-aged need to be involved. Likewise with the men as well. We also need to have other stakeholders like religious leaders and traditional leaders. I still find it very baffling when I hear people, a team of people are meeting to decide a policy or to make changes, positive changes in the community, and there's no representative of a traditional leader or a religious leader. Now, why am I emphasizing on this? And that's because we know that in the society we live in, generally Africa, we place a huge emphasis on what our traditional and religious leaders do say. And what they do say tend to be what really happens in the home, whether it be it is the head of the family, which is the man who is implementing it, or even the mother, the woman as well, who's implementing it. So at no point should we be having any processes that need to change, to effect decision or discuss decision where we don't have proper representatives. Discrimination, so unfair treatment we know, when we say discrimination, there's so many levels of this, and it connects, what I'm about to say connects to gender-based violence. I remember over 10 years ago, I had a close friend who was being abused by her partner, and she went to the police station. And when she got to the police station, she was told was that, she had been badly maltreated. She had scars and everything. And her response was, when she got to the police station, the police man asked her, "Madam, what did you do to him? And whatever you did to him is a domestic matter. You need to go and beg him for forgiveness. We cannot get involved in this kind of issue. This is a domestic issue." Now, this is the discrimination that I want to highlight. When you have a woman going to go and seek help from an authority, a place of authority, and rather the place of authority is not able to offer the protection that she needs. In another light, I have another story of a young girl who wanted to start being, well, she was not married and she wanted to start being sexually active. And so she did the responsible thing, which is what was to go to a health facility to ask for family planning or contraceptive, so that she's not forced to make decisions beyond her control. And she came back and complained that when she got there, she was not able to get the family planning services which she needed, because the nurse in charge or the health worker in charge decided that they wanted to give her a lecture on abstinence and what God said and what God did not say regarding sex before marriage. Now, I'm not preaching that people should engage in sex before marriage, but I'm also not an advocate for not providing services for people when they need them. Now, this is a discrimination we have, because if it was a young man who went to the facility and asked for maybe condoms or other forms of protection to help, so that he also is not in a position where he has to make decisions he does not want to be able to deal with, he would not have that lecture. And so this is where discrimination comes in. So we need to ensure that the policies that we have in the different states in this country is applicable to all parties, both men and female, because it does take two to tango. And so therefore equal responsibilities or equal rights should be given to both parties. Now, gender power dynamics. Again, I still keep emphasizing on Nigeria and Africa, because that's where I am right now. And we know that power dynamics are very interesting in Nigeria, not only in the home, because it does start from the home, but all the way to the top. Women cannot be limited to working, to paid work and career advances. And then we have a lot of people who would ask, what is wrong with a woman staying home at work? I'm staying home to work, I'm not going to work. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with that if that's what the woman chooses to do for herself. But if when it is imposed, that's when the issue becomes an issue. So I'm not an advocate of imposing anything on whether it's male or female, but we do need to make sure that the opportunities are there for women to engage in employment. We need to ensure that the opportunities are there for women to engage in decision-making as well, and ensure that women are not just stamped as the caregiver, while men are stamped as the breadwinner. Because in some cases, I've seen some cases where it actually has worked for the man to be the caregiver and the woman to be the breadwinner. And things are changing slowly, and we're seeing it, although it's not changing as fast as we need to. So this again speaks to what I was saying. We can see this is a picture of, I believe, the 9th Assembly. We're now in the 10th Assembly. And we can see this is a picture that many of you who are watching this, who have connected today, are used to seeing when it comes to power dynamics. Whenever there's a high level meeting that involves legislators and just senior leaders, we see this kind of picture where we see either one or two women or no women at all. And so that's what this picture really demonstrates. It demonstrates what is happening in our National Assembly, what is happening in many of our top organizations, the leadership levels. This is just a demonstration. Now, the strategies for promoting advocacy and partnership is policy change. Now, when I say policy change, I also believe that we need to go back and look at the existing policies we have that have not been properly implemented. Because Nigeria, if you go to every ministry, we have the best consultants working on policy documents, and we have beautiful policy documents that are that put together amazing teams, technical participants, great leaders across the spectrum, and they've put in their input and come up with great policy documents. However, when it comes to implementation, this is where we have issues. A lot of things are not being implemented. So yes, they are in the policies, but there's no implementation, and there are no kind of penalties when things are not done properly. So I believe that in terms of advocacy and partnership, we need to really focus on the implementation of some of the existing policies we have before we even start to go to what we need to change. Promoting inclusion and representativeness, I've already touched on this, where every single person, different stakeholders must be represented at the table in order to have an effective strategy or policy that can be measured, or that we can go and measure. Conduct intersectional. So support capacity building. So we need to support, capacity building is the only way to improve knowledge and understanding of anything. And so we need to focus more on the groups that we're working with, whether it's, even if the finance is an issue, we can start by even with smaller groups. We don't always have to work with 100 people, 200 people. You can start by having even sessions of just 10 people, 12 people, whatever capacity your organization or you as an individual that's listening to this has, you can actually start building the capacity of individuals around you and teams and groups around you. This picture has a group of women where this group, their capacity is being built, they're being trained on issues to do with parenting, issues to do with gender equality in their various communities. As you can see, they're wearing their masks. So this was during the COVID, just after COVID period. So possibly to end of 2020, beginning of 2021. So we need to have more gatherings like this where we can just bring people together and build their capacity, ensure that we engage them at every level from the beginning to the end. We don't just create policies for those that we think are going to benefit from them without actually including them in the process. Yes. Gender gaps in digital space. So we know that the United Nations is really focusing on digital skills, especially for women and girls. This year, the annual meeting in New York for the Commission on the Status of Women was focused on digital skills for women and girls. As we know, this is a huge problem, not only in the developing world, but also in the developed world as well. So we have issues of limited access to digital skills. Yes, we have limited access because of, again, the whole that gender social norms where we believed a few years ago, maybe like 10 years ago, it wasn't, it didn't seem profitable for a woman to be involved in digital skills. And in fact, yesterday I had a team of young computer science graduates, and I was speaking to them and I was asking, why am I only seeing men, male? Why am I not seeing females? And they were saying, and I was told by one of them, he said in his class, out of over 100 students, there were only 14 females. And that was so disappointing to hear because he just graduated last year. And if in 2022, we are still having such small numbers of females entering digital skills or computer science, it's quite worrying because where are we heading to as a nation? And then I now further asked, okay, those 14, what happened? He said, oh, usually they don't even practice that. He kept in touch with some, they don't even go into, they just have the degree and then they move on to other things, you know. And possibly that can be because they've been discouraged from engaging. We have someone in Kano who started the Kano Hub, who is really doing well. And I mentioned Kano because we know that some states obviously are doing better with digital skills for females than others. And when I hear states like the core northern states having groups or teams, organizations really advocating, is actually even quite inspiring to see. Back to the Commission on the Status of Women, the focus on the whole 2 weeks was on digital skills, how to improve access for women and girls in schools, how to ensure that even from parenting skills as well, where we're not shaping women, females or young girls to actually be fearful of the digital space. Yes, and in saying that, we also have to make the digital space safe for not only young girls, but also young boys. So when we talk about digital skills, I feel like safety is also an importance, because perhaps if we have more secure safety measures, then it will be more appealing, because nobody wants to come to a platform and be harassed or have to be chased away from it. We need to definitely work on how strategies of encouraging more females to join the sciences, technology, engineering, mathematics, and so forth, to ensure that we have a wider workforce in the years to come, a more representative workforce in the years to come. So stereotypes, again, there's nowhere you go to that you will not hear stereotypes and biases based on individual gender lenses. Even I am guilty of it. We're all guilty of it, where something will happen and you, in your mind, even if you don't speak it, you're just saying, oh, is that not the role of a man? Is that not the role of a woman? And so we ourselves as individuals, the change starts with us. We have to start paying more attention to our thought processes on gender stereotyping, bias, and then from ourselves also try and extend whatever it is that we're changing ourselves to those around us. I've already touched on the employment disparity, so we can just skip. Collaboration. That's the key to any successful policy, program, implementation, creating a collaboration mindset in everything you do will definitely work for the better of yourself and your team. So the different things everybody brings to the table is not always about, when I say collaboration, it's not always about money, and we need to understand it's not always about money. A lot of people bring in-kind support as well to the round team or to the table. So yes, and one organization might be more financially buoyant than others, but another one might maybe have more grassroots skills. Another person might maybe have more technical skills. And so we need to, when trying to do any policy, is to ensure we have a kind of a scope and analysis of who do we have around us, or who do we have access to, or where can we access the certain individuals or organization that can give our team or our group a more holistic outlook. And to raise awareness to whatever it is that we're trying to do. Social media, as we all know now, I don't believe that anybody can do anything now when it comes to change making without social media, without even the mainstream media as well. They are so key to the delivery of the message that we're trying to send out to anyone. Social media platforms are great for those who have access to it. But then we must remember that we have those that don't have access to social media. So we need to still concentrate on the mainstream, like the radio. We have a lot of people who have who are not able to read and write, but they listen to the radio. In fact, those in the community that listen to the radio are actually most times more informed than those of us who we feel are more educated than them, because they're constantly glued to the radios. They're constantly listening to updates. They know, if you sit down with someone who gets all their information from radio, you would be so amazed about how well informed they are about certain things. So we shouldn't, because of the craze of social media, we shouldn't forget that radio is important. We shouldn't forget that newspapers are important. We still have people that read newspapers and don't even watch TV and don't even go on social media. So we need to pay attention to all media platforms as well. We also need to, when working with the media, is let them be part of the the stakeholders. We must recognize them as stakeholders, because a lot of the times when we have interactions with the media, they complain that we only call them at the end. And a lot of organizations are guilty of this, myself included in the beginning, where you would only have a program, and when you're done, you call the media to tell them, or just as you're having the program, you invite them to the program. What about the planning stages? What about their inputs, their valuable inputs during the planning stages before you even get to implementation or the monitoring aspect of it? So let's highlight that in everything we do to ensure that we carry them along. So research and data. So Nigeria has an issue with data. We lack data, and we need to start ensuring, well, a lot of organizations are very involved in it. We have a lot of consulting companies in the past 5 to 10 years who have come up to try and rectify our issue with data. I mean, obviously, the more data we have, the more we can work with, the more we can do predictions, the more that we can analyze the statistics of what has happened, and and probably do some projections as well. So engaging decision makers as well. We have to, that goes back to the policy aspect, the legislators. We are in the 10th Assembly, and it's quite unfortunate. We only have 17 females in the current 10th Assembly. It's actually quite shocking, because in the 9th Assembly for Senate, we had 8 females, and that has gone down to 4 females, being that none of the 8 previous candidates actually went back for election for reasons best known to themselves. And then for the House of Assembly, we had 13 in the last in the 9th Assembly, and now we have 14. So we have 4 senators out of 109 senators. I mean, the numbers says it all. And we have 14 House of Representatives out of 360 legislatures. Again, the numbers say it all. So those that are involved in getting women more into politics, I believe that your work is cut out for you against the next elections, and you shouldn't wait till the next elections. You should actually have started the work already, because there's a lot of work to do to ensure that we change these numbers and have more representatives. The 10th Assembly is going to make working on policies. Is going to be, I mean, it's no wonder why the special seat for women failed, because we don't have enough representatives to fight for women when we're talking about decisions or, a leadership. So we mobilize, yes, we need to mobilize supporters from the grassroots to the top. We need to ensure that before we can mobilize, we need to build the capacity self. So when you do mobilize, you build capacity, because when you have mobilized people and you're not training them well, they don't know the direction to go, and we all need to be going in the same direction. Grassroots impacts and movements you can't even quantify the impact that they make. So yes, those that are sitting in the AC rooms and writing policies, they're very important. However, if you are not working with those on the grassroots, your work is really not going to be effective, so to speak. Monitoring and evaluation, we definitely have to have those who are experts to do this, because we need to ensure that whatever it is that we have been working on, whether it's we want to go back to implement some of the older policies or we want to create newer policies, we need a team to ensure that we know where there's actually improvements happening and there's actually growth or progress, positive progress happening. Building coalitions are so important. Like I said, you can even do this in mobilizing support and in building coalitions. You can start very small and then grow, keep building and keep adding, and then, it will get bigger. And, the journey starts with just one drop of water. Yeah, so we can see in this picture, we have teams that are involved in, this was a health project, and we can see that we have well-represented teams. We have males, females, different sectors, involved. And this allows for resources to come together, expertise to come together, and networks to come together for a common goal. So these are the benefits, as you can see. Increased accessibility is not there, but increased accountability, increased credibility, greater sustainability, improved capacity, and increased participation. Obviously, if you have different people from different stakeholders and different areas coming together, you know, if you, like I said, if one organization is bringing money and the other is not bringing money, it doesn't reduce the value of the other organization. I believe everybody has a significant role to play in all coalitions and all groups and all teams. So engaging men and women is something I'm constantly talking about, because when we talk about policy, for example, when you talk about maternal health issues, and then you start bringing gender norms into it, where you say, oh, only women can come for this meeting, and now, when you are having only women coming for meetings, we have to remember that at the community level, the head of the household is the man. And that is how it is based on culture and tradition. So how do we focus so much of our resources on trying to ensure that the woman is making better health choices for herself and her household when we don't involve the men? So in most of our programs, we ensure that we have integrated programs where men are also joining women. And for those places where we cannot integrate them together, we have separate programs for the men, where the men also are understanding the processes, they're understanding the change, they're understanding the advocacy efforts that we're making, they're understanding. There are also their own awareness is also being raising as well. The same thing with boys as well. When you go to schools and you're only focusing on the girls and you're not talking to the boys. Now, if the men and the boys are left out and the women and the girls their awareness is raising, and they begin to know the right thing to do, that begins to create a conflict between themselves and the men and the boys. So we need to ensure that we carry everybody along, so that, you know, we are not cutting ourselves short before we even start. The financing, this really has to do with budget allocation. It has to do with gender responsive public procurement. We need to know how we allocate funds. It doesn't mean that we necessarily need to increase funding at a particular place, but we need to understand how each budget or each procurement process is taking into account gender equality at every level from start to beginning. And so this involves different consideration, different priorities, and it just really involves women and the consideration of gender equality at every level, from design to implementation to evaluation. Yes. So this is a transformation strategy. It focuses on women and girls empowerment. It really is aimed to confirm gender-based inequality. So we need, again, a lot of the issues we're having is from harmful gender norms. And so we just need to work on that. I can't overemphasize it enough, how we ourselves play a role in the harmful gender norms as well, both from the home to the office to the member states. When we get back from the home, it goes to the school. And so I started this presentation by asking you to try and go back and remind yourself, what did you want to be in primary school? What did you want to be in secondary school? And then when you got to university, what did you want to study? Effectively, this is a demonstration of what it is. When a female student is assertive, she's told to, she's behaving like a man. You're not a man. Even a female worker, we hear it even up to today, you know, when a female worker is very assertive and driven, and, you know, it's misinterpreted as, oh, you're trying to be a man, you need to be more like a woman, you know. But if a man is assertive and, you know, driven, it's like, oh yes, well done, you're a strong man and all that. So we need to stop that narrative and, you know, kind of ensure that those who are committed to their profession, committed to their professional growth, should be appreciated for that and not be called names because of that. Secondary school, women are not, it was primary school and secondary school, they'll say women are not supposed to be in sciences, women are not supposed to be doctors, they're more supposed to be nurses. So I remember when I was much, much younger, I used to think that it was, women are supposed to be only nurses and not doctors. And so the strategies for the school, we have to address, the teachers as well need training as well, because after the home, the next important set of people we have that actually creates impressions on us are teachers. So we need to ensure we have trainings, find budgets or create budgets so that we can train the teachers that are imprinting on our children. It's important to raise awareness about how to just cancel stereotyping and how to ensure that the teachers are also including the males and the females in all the activities and not just excluding them because of perceived gender roles. And helping children also question gender attitude. So not that, oh, okay, I'm a girl, I'm not allowed to do certain things because I'm a girl and he's a boy, so he's allowed, and I'm a girl, I'm not allowed to speak in public. And so I would just remain quiet when I actually have things to say concerning whatever topic it is that's being taught in the school. So in conclusion, we know that the burden is really on women when you talk about inequality, but notwithstanding, we also have to pay attention to men and boys as well, ensure that there's inclusiveness in everything we do concerning policy, concerning advocacy around them. We need to ensure that financing and public procurement also pays great attention to gender equality so that we can have a more robust and effective finance and procurement policies. We need to ensure that legal representative are also not attached to inequalities as well at every stage as well. So for the political side, we definitely need to put our hands together and go back to the drawing board and figure out why we're decreasing in numbers for our representatives rather than increasing in numbers. And then again, from our homes, we need to ensure that we also have better parenting skills so that we are not also creating a bad platform or a bad road for our children to start on. And then also work on the teachers, as I've mentioned earlier on, and ensure that we begin to encourage more participation in the digital space so that we have an inclusive digital sector, so to speak, in the years to come. The investments and benefits that are involved in ensuring gender equality are enormous, and then we need to ensure that they are allocated appropriately to build better structures for positive change. What is wrong has been wrong for a long time, and we need to start putting effective change to correct some of the things that are happening as well. Thank you very much for listening, and merci, nagode, Oshe. God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Hawa, for that beautiful session. It was great to actually listen to different ways on how we should go about advocacy, especially in terms of policy, and also the importance of partnership in doing this. Now, I also believe that looking at the strategies for policy advocacy is something of great importance, but looking at the implementation gray areas, I think a lot of CSOs are actually having a lot of hardcore in that particular field. So, but right now, I think it's going to be like a fit for more discussion for us. But before then, I would like to welcome Mr. Henry Ijoma to join us on the panelist session as we go through the Q&A. So to our participants, please, if you have questions, feel free to use the Q&A session, as this is an area where we're going to dissect more and discuss what we feel needs to be done for us to move the needle forward. Because there's one thing I believe in putting pen to paper a whole lot, and that is being practical. We have a lot of great policies in Nigeria. We have a lot of great advocacy strategies that has been built up, both for internal CSOs and for those that are actually doing advisory for donors that are looking forward to carry out these advocacies in the country. But there is one problem. Take, for instance, you develop a policy and you've done your job as a CSO. Now it is left for the government to actually own the implementation of this policy. And sorry to say, but we know how the government operates, and the speed of light at which a private sector or a CSO would operate, it's actually different from how the government is going to operate. Now we have these policies, and then you find out that based on the great work you've done, the implementation stores exactly the positive impact that you are expected to see. Yes, policies have been developed, but what do you think are the practical steps that we need to employ to make sure that these policies that have been developed are actually implemented, not just at the national level, but down to what the subnational level? Because we find a lot of issues at the subnational, at the national level. A lot of issues, people are suffering at the subnational level. How do you think we need to go about this for a better implementation strategy? So I'm going to leave the floor open to Henry. I'm going to leave it open to you, Hawa. Let's discuss and let's see how we can move this needle forward. Over.
Thank you very much, Dino.
Thank you. Hawa has the speaker.
Hi, Henry.
Go ahead, Hawa.
So for me, I feel like I'm a big advocate of states taking responsibility for their own issues. Yes, where the national is the overall, but I believe that states need to take responsibility for their own issues because they all have their own allocations as well. They also have their own, and whichever CSO is working, you're also working under a particular state. So we're not just working in isolation. Wherever you're working, you're actually supposed to be registered under that state as well. Even if you're registered, for example, we are registered with the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Women Affairs and Ministry of Education. But whenever we go to a state, we also have to ensure that our presence is acknowledged and approved by that particular state. So it goes back to the states in terms of implementation and any growth. So we need to focus on the states, and we thank God we have a new administration, and we're hoping that the new administration will understand that their work is cut out for them.
Yeah, thank you, Hawa, for your insights. Many times we have looked at policy as something so huge, and that's why many actors in the policy advocacy sector get defeated easily, because we don't seem to try to bring policy down to community levels. And I like the way you approached the discussion earlier, because it seemed that you paid attention to the fact that to be able to drive policy change, one needs to be aware of what you are driving at. So it seems like there's a move from awareness to actual strategies. So what will inform adequate strategies for whoever is an actor in policy change advocacy is the fact that the person is well aware of the issues. And you have laid a lot of backgrounds to the issues that we already have. And like Dino is mentioning, we need to look at the practical steps that will lead to results. You base a lot of your concerns on norms. And I think that some of those norms are informed by community level policies that may not have been written. So some of the things we consider as norms are actually practices within local communities. So it's important that we pay attention at that level, that there are things that we do at small organizations, small institutions, local communities, that we do over time and people take them to become policies, even when they are not written. So attention must be paid to the actors within those circles to begin to reorient them, of course, growing from awareness to actual response to the issues, so that even when you are agitating for some policy changes, there could seem to be reference points. There are issues, there are things you could refer to that people are already doing within the localities. Many times those who we seek to help us make changes to our policies, they rely on the fact that some of these things may be alien to the people the policies seek to serve. But if we can already see examples happening in local communities and small organizations, then it becomes reference for everyone. So I think that's something to look at. It's a practical step. Can we identify organizations that are exemplary, local communities where some of the things we need to see at the higher level have been exemplified? Then there's something you mentioned about inclusion. For everybody who is working in the space, the whole idea of this conversation is that the policies many people pursue, whether it is in the wash sector, whether it is in the education sector, whatever policy you are pursuing, that there's a sense in which these policies need to be gender responsive. And to be gender responsive means you need to be aware of the gender issues. So I like the point that you raised about individuals who have not been properly included, especially those who use radio. And I think that's a major strategy for use to mobilize public support, because many times if you take it to the level of proper lawmaking, where policy changes happen, you see what do they call them? Public hearing, where people need to come and speak about it. Sometimes these public hearings are left to only the elites, as it were. We leave out the actual people who the laws and policies are supposed to affect their lives. And I think that when you mention the fact that there are lots of people who use radio, who still read newspapers, the tendency is that we neglect a whole lot of our population. So I think that for those of us who are agitating for a number of policy changes, when public hearings like that happen, we can create awareness among the local community members and make them part of those public hearings, because their opinions too become very useful.
And thank you so much, Henry. And I actually agree to the fact of radio. Looking at this, I think these are the times where we need to, to bit and go back to the olden days. Taking, for instance, the part of a storytelling. This is actually something that most persons are really not, but it will go to issues using storytelling, ways of explaining these things and what it's all about, and how we can be able to solve these issues. Now, these are simple things that even the uneducated can actually understand and know exactly what you are talking about. These are ways that we should employ in our advocacy, in our communication. It's good to build a communication strategy. You can have like a whole deck for that, or about it. But the thing is, you have to consider these same persons you are actually building this advocacy for.
Yeah,
will they understand the message?
Yeah. There's a point I want to raise that is very instructive, which is a major step in building strategies. I talked about existing policies. Many times people want to just churn out new policies without looking at the existing ones. Then there's the point of the intersectional analysis, which she equally pointed, that many times you could pick one issue, and if you do a proper analysis of that issue, you see that it intersects many other angles. So one piece of legislation, for instance, can have multiple impacts in different sections. So for everybody who is working in this sector, trying to make efforts at policy changes, it is not enough for us to have a plethora of policies, just for the sake of having policies for every mentioned social issue. There could be one policy with intersectional impact on various policy issues. So rather than reinvent the wheel, if we already have existing pieces of legislation or policies, wherever they are, whether at local levels, at the national level or sub-national level, as the case may be, it could be a useful effort for every actor who is working on something new to go and review the existing ones and even find where the policy gaps are. So it may just be the gaps in that specific policy that you will address. And by the time you address it, it makes implementation equally more easy. I once had an opportunity to share with a group. There's a group in Abuja here that does some kind of policy roundtable. What they do many times is that every new legislation, they pick that legislation, call a few stakeholders and do a serious review of what that policy is and the implication in different sectors. And in that sense, even those who are supposed to be actors, let me give you an instance. The Violence Against Persons Act is one piece of legislation that many people have celebrated. Oh, we have moved from just behavior change to having laws to punish people who go wrong and all that. So all the work that has been done by civil societies and all the partners to make sure that that law has been passed in many states, have been domesticated in many states, have happened. But go and check, not many people know what it is. So that law is not able to drive any behavior change. That law is not able to really punish people, because even those who are supposed to, in some sense, be the custodians of the law may not know the provisions. So capacity building becomes important. Capacity building for those who need to implement the laws, capacity building for those who need to know what the contents of the law is. Many times people don't behave beyond their capacity. Knowledge puts a lead on everyone. So when the public is aware of the pieces of legislation, it helps to modify behavior. So my point exactly is that for all of us who are working in policy change, advocacy sector, we should not joke with the fact that we need to create awareness about what we are trying to drive. When people are aware, even when the policies have not been passed, there's a tendency that at individual levels and at group levels, there may be a response in behavior. So some persons have heard of what you are fighting for. It has not been passed as law in any states, but people can begin to respond at the level of behavior. And so that's some result in itself.
Yeah, thank you so much, Henry. I actually agree to what you just talked about. And I like the fact where you talked about the small group where you actually, they pick up policy, bring in some members of the legislature to review and discuss about it. It would be great if we can have more of those groups, because I believe the more we have, the stronger the force to push for these advocacies. So I'm going to turn over to the Q&A, because we have like a bunch of questions there. So just not to waste time. So the first question is from Mercy Anthony, and she's asking that how can civil society forge partnerships with the private sector on gender responsive financing? So over to you, Hawa. I believe that question is directed to you.
So thank you very much for the question. You just have to, it can be done in different ways. So for example, a civil society wants to start a project and they approach maybe a bank or an oil company for financial support. But again, I have to emphasize that a lot of civil society, when they are looking for support, they only go and look for financial support, monetary support. Support is beyond money. You can have a lot of in-kind donations. You can have a lot of in-kind support that can be given to you. So if you're working with corporate organizations, for example, I just had an event last month, and the venue was given to me given to our organization for free. So I didn't have to go and look for money to pay for the venue. So a lot of civil society, when they are trying to in planning programs, they don't understand that you can literally do a program without not spending 100% funds. You can get a lot of things in kind support. So that's one of the things civil society needs to start writing to corporate organizations for support. And in the supports, they should look more, I like the fact that you touched on storytelling. Storytelling is huge for advocacy. I myself have gone through a lot of storytelling trainings and courses. So it's huge for advocacy, especially when you're focused on the grassroots, on the community level. Another thing they can do is, even as trivial as it sounds, role playing. When you go to schools and you do role playing, it sounds something so simple, but the impact is so huge. When you are having the children role play, and it's not only the boys that are doctors, and it's not only the women that are carrying the baby to sit down and look after the baby at home, because children are constantly role playing in schools. So we need to ensure that we integrate our programs and advocacy inside role playing, whether it's be it with children or the community leaders themselves as well. Another thing I want to touch on for CSOs is the focal group discussions. CSOs don't know they need to begin to understand how important and how vital focal group discussions are. Focal group discussions can be from 8 participants to 12 participants. Now, if you're working in a particular community, so community A, for example, and you go there and you pick the key stakeholders of the community, the gatekeepers of the community, possibly the chief, and if the chief is not available, maybe his representative, the woman leader. Every community you go to, there are structures in place. There are structures, and we sometimes feel like we sometimes ourselves, CSOs, act like international donors and partners where we feel like we know it all. But we don't know it all. We need to ensure that we work with those who actually live in those communities. As a CSO, you're working in a community, you possibly don't live in that community. So you can't know better than the people that are in the community. So having those focal group discussions where you bring the woman leader from the community, the youth leader from the community, perhaps maybe the Yoruba leader, the Igbo leader, because they have this kind of diverse structures, and you bring them together into a focal group discussion, have prepared answers, and it's as small as that the budget to create a focal group discussion is that small. Now you can actually now decide that, okay, we are good at, this is our strength in bringing together the community leaders to do this focal group discussion. Perhaps we should reach a consultancy agency or company to say, okay, this is what we've gotten. We don't know how to translate it, because a lot of things, a lot of CSOs fail actually in monitoring and evaluation. That's the truth. It's not a strength of many CSOs. And I guess as they grow, they begin to be the growth of their monitoring and evaluation team or department expands, but it's not a strength of a lot of CSOs. And so you need to begin to identify with consultancy groups that is their strength, or maybe other NGOs that is their strength as well. So back to your question, the question about how relating with corporate organizations, there are many ways you can relate to them. You can reach them for in-kind donations, even if it's just to say supply the drinks and the food. We don't want you to give us money, but if you can supply us food and drinks, or you can supply us venue, or you can supply us transportation, or you can supply us commodities. There's so many ways, multiple ways to partner with corporate organizations. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's absolutely spot on. But I would just like to add, I know why you travel a lot, but you are very passionate about the grassroots. So many times you talk about this at the micro level. The point you made about the question asked how CSOs can actually partner with private sector organizations. And that's actually the goal of the SCALE project, to build indigenous capacity so that organizations within can source for funding locally. One of the things I would then point out will be what we usually, some of the trainings we have done to build capacity in the advocacy space is about, okay, issue identification. Many times the CSOs who are acting have not properly identified the issue. If you have properly identified the issue and analyzed it properly, then if you are going to stakeholders or to seek partnership from stakeholders, then you will be communicating to them what is in it for them. No organization wants to support whatever you are doing if they don't find where it benefits them. So that becomes a selling point. So if you adequately identify your issue, then it becomes easier to seek partnership, because the person you are asking for will find where some benefit lies for them.
So much, Henry. You both done justice to that question. The next question is saying policy advocacy is focused on either behavioral change or policy change, that we know. But how can gender-responsive advocacy address this, considering Nigerians' religious peculiarities? So anyone can go first. Henry, you can decide to go first.
Okay, so in the last few years, I have had the privilege of working with another organization on the gender response amongst religious organizations. And one of the things that led to that is the fact that religious institutions play actually a major role. Religious beliefs and identities play a major role in many of the things that happen in our society, so it cannot be ignored. So part of the things we're doing is to help the religious stakeholders develop mechanisms, all right? Mechanisms and frameworks to, how do I call it now? Gender programming, as it were. That while, let's take for instance, a church Many churches have pastors' offices or priest offices. What can you do when you are setting up your office? Considering sexual harassment and exploitations and many other things and violence as the case may be, how do you build your office? How do you respond to members of your congregation if they are violated in any way? So we are raising their awareness and helping them build capacity in ways for which they can build their own mechanisms to ensure that whatever they do, they have a gender lens. They approach it with a gender lens. So we want to build a new church. The architecture should reflect inclusion. I want to prepare a sermon. The sermon should reflect inclusion. I want so that some aspects of even religious practices or beliefs that seem to subjugate one gender against the other is actually critically evaluated before they are preached, in the sense that you look at the far-reaching implication and because there are many times some of these things are, interpreted to suit the gender bias of the person who is preaching it. So you cannot effectively pursue any policy change, especially in the area of gender in this country, or any policy at all, if you don't recognize the role of religion. For a country like Nigeria, you cannot divorce religion from it. So I think that question is apt. Whatever we do, we must include the actors. And the actors are really willing many times. Sometimes we blame the actors and think that, oh, they are not responding to the issues. But what we have discovered in the last 2 years that we have worked with many of these actors is that they really don't know. Some of them don't know. And because we have neglected that sector so much, they are left to the level of their knowledge. But when we create more awareness for them, increase their capacity, I think we'll get to where we should be.
Thank you for that, Henry. Howard, do you have anything to chip in?
I think I believe I actually spoke about this in the presentation. The role of the religious and traditional leaders cannot be overemphasized. We need to, like Henry said, we need to make them better informed. A lot of them are not better informed. It's not that they're not willing, but the fear of the unknown actually makes a lot of people do the wrong things. And so some of them who have not been well informed and their capacity of themselves and their cabinets are not built, end up going the way that we are trying to avoid. And so we ourselves, again, we need to, in talking about religious and traditional leaders, we need to carry them along from the beginning. Again, so all stakeholders, all actors, all gatekeepers need to be carried along from the beginning. There's a lot of then this is a mistake that a lot of the processes we have, where we just neglect certain people, and then when we remember them, we just like pick them up and try and put them in the puzzle. But unfortunately, because they are not well informed, they're not able to be as effective when we leave the communities. Because when we are going to leave the communities as CSOs, as donors, we eventually, in fact, the purpose of donor funding is to ensure that we create sustainability when we have left. And sustainability actually does lie in the gatekeepers of the community.
Thank you so much. I agree, because I believe ownership is key. It's not just about carrying out an intervention program. You won't always be there to supersede or see how it goes. So it's better you involve these key actors from the very beginning, so they can own it and drive the process even while the program is over. So our next question is from Francis Ademola, and he's asking, how much influence does religion make in perpetuating gender disparities? So I think we've actually answered this, from this question. So I'll go to the next one, which is from Magdalene Abeda, which says, why do we have rivalry push for gender equity instead of gender equality? And how do we create a balance for this? So I'll leave you, Howard, to lead on this, while Henry goes after you.
Sorry, I didn't get the question. I had gender equality and equity.
Okay, yeah, I'll come again. Why do we have a rivalry push for gender equity instead of gender equality? How do we create a balance for this?
Well, I think the words equity and inequality, they're always they're always misunderstood, you know. Equity and so equality is like, oh, okay, myself and Henry are together and we're in the same room and we should be treated equally. However, equity clearly states that I'm a female, he's a male, and so we have to respect the differences that we also are bringing to the table. And so I know that a lot of people, I'm not an equity expert, but I know a lot of people actually make this confusion between equity and equality. I will hand over to Henry to continue with this because I'm not an equity expert.
I'll answer this question by calling Magdalene's attention. Magdalene would better understand exactly what she means when she's talking about rivalry. Just like you have said, this could be mistaken. Some persons will use equity to refer to the same thing. Some persons will say equality to refer to the same. But if Magdalene had created a clear-cut difference between equity and equality, then what she has done is that she has identified an issue for advocacy. So she can pick up that issue and work around that. And then expand it, create awareness so that everybody understands that it's different. So that in itself is an issue identified if the context for which equity and equality are being used are supposed to be different. But I know that a lot of times people use this to mean exactly the same thing.
Thank you so much for that, Henry. So we're actually running late. So I'll just keep moving to the questions as we go by so we can manage our time effectively. So the next question is from Ungoha Hida Igboko, which says, what steps do we need to take as CSOs towards moving for the implementation of already existing policies that address gender inequalities? I don't know, Hilda, if you've been on the call, but this is an issue that we've addressed over and over and over again. But sorry,
so what Hilda should do is, if there are existing policies that she's worried about, then she needs to first of all understand what the policies are and create awareness around that policy. I think that's the beginning.
Yes, I agree.
That's a lot of awareness.
I agree, to identify bottlenecks and gaps in those already existing policy. So to Zenhi Direct, wants to know, first of all, there's a comment, it's a nice presentation. Is it possible to also make presentation on gender that will include key population? They are also part of the gender and sexual minority. Yeah, I agree with that. I believe we're going to work towards that. If you want to know more, just keep joining the webinar. You know, it keeps going on in series, and I'm sure you will actually tend to know more about that. Okay, so from Bliss, Ojero say, good morning all, I'm Bliss. I recently conducted an advocacy capacity assessment for an organization. The Nigerian NGO works to protect the rights of LGBTQ, but we know that the Nigerian law does not support this. But their argument is that even if it's not represented, it does not deny the fact that these sets of people exist. They are gender responsive, following your lecture, sorry. As a gender expert, what is your thoughts about including these sets of people in the Nigerian laws? And if they have to be included, how would you advise such NGOs to advocate for these sets of people? Over to you.
While we recognize the fact that these are a group of people who needs protection under the law, then what our good friend is asking, Bliss is asking for, is that we recognize it under the law. And if the law deprives us at the moment from giving that protection, then it shouldn't be something you want to flog yourself up about. Then if you consider it as an important issue to push for a law recognizing it, then that's some work that you need to do. But not that you violate the existing laws because you think that you need a law, right? So until the time you are able to get a law to protect the rights of these people, then you must not be seen to be violating the law of the land.
Yeah, thank you for that. My own addition is that before you learn how to run, you have to learn how to crawl. And so back to the person who asked the question, as Henry has said, Nigeria doesn't recognize the LGBT community, and the legal system also has penalties that have been put in place against those who are found to be part of the LGBT community. And so perhaps more NGOs who are ready to advocate for LGBT community should go back and try and start working on that block, because that's a blockage already. And until that blockage is removed, we cannot start saying we want to address inequalities for those in the LGBT community. And again, that's a lot of work that needs to be done. Every CSO or NGO has their focus and target area. And so for those who that is their focus and target area, I believe they need to come together and begin to know, dust and check where the gaps are and what they can do to ensure that the law that has been put to block any processes towards them is removed.
Thank you both for that great answer. So I'm going to take one more question, and then we'll move into the other session. So for other questions that cannot be answered, don't worry, we're going to make sure we share it with the facilitator and as well with Mr. Henry. So whenever the slides are being shared with everyone, you will have the answers to these questions. So the final question says, what practical steps can we take to integrate the male group in this conversation of gender inclusiveness? Because, you know, context differs and some of them can be difficult to work with. Over.
Oh, I believe that the men and boys should be involved from the beginning. So whatever area that your CSO is focusing on, ensure that you begin to be intentional. The team is intentional about involving boys and girls. So whatever programs you're doing in schools and communities, you're intentional that you're not only just focusing on the young girls, but also focusing on the young boys, because we can't develop one particular group and ignore the rest, because then we will now see the problems ahead in the future. For example, if you're having antenatal programs, your antenatal program should not be focused just on women. It should also be focused on men as well, because men also have a role to play as fathers. And so they should be involved and they should be aware of the prenatal, the postnatal issues that are associated with pregnancy and bringing life to the world. And in terms of discrimination now, I touched on domestic violence earlier, and I told a story about my friend who had experienced domestic violence, but we also have men who have experienced domestic violence, and we tend to ignore it. And when you hear domestic violence, the first thing that comes to anybody's head, if we're honest for ourselves, is that, oh, a woman was battered. We never ever remember or think that a man can be battered. And we have stories of that, maybe not as prominent as the women being battered, but we have stories of that. Now we're having shelters for women, we're having support groups for women. We need to start ensuring that we also begin to create support groups for men who have been abused in relationships with their partners. So in everything we're doing for the women and girls, we also need to mirror it for the boys and men.
Thank you so much for that. Mr. Harry, any final words regarding the question?
Not exactly, that's fine.
Okay, I want to say thank you so much, Hawa, once again. Thank you so much, Henry, for joining this panelist section and for the great answers that you gave to the various questions that were asked. Giving us a closing remark today, I'll go back to Emmanuel Ifyong, who is the policy analyst at ACI Associates and a pioneer also for the SCAPE project, to give us a closing remark. Over to you, Emmanuel.
Thank you, Dino. Thank you for an excellent work moderating the webinar today. Thank you to Hawa for facilitating. Thank you to Henry for contributing to the panel conversations. And thank you to you all, our participants who have stayed with us for a little over an hour and a half. It has been a pleasure on behalf of ACIU Associates to organize this webinar and bring it to us. As civil society actors, as workers in the civic space, while implementing our various advocacy campaigns and advocacy asks, it is important that we do so with a gender consciousness and look through everything that we do via a gender lens. Again, I'm Emmanuel Effiong, the project manager of Scale here at ACI Associates, saying thank you. And until next time when we see you, keep working, keep advocating, and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you and bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye, everyone.